What's up, fuckers? It's Exosha coming at you live from this house. Still fucked up. Yeah, it's like 4 o'clock now in the afternoon, as you can see. God, it's bright. I was thinking about David O. Russell movies. I started thinking about Spanking the Monkey, which, if you don't know, is it's one of his earlier movies, if not his first. Maybe his first movie. I don't know. Or maybe his second. I don't know. One of the first two, I think. It was from 1994. It has the guy who played Daniel Faraday in Lost. I can't remember his real name at the moment. Can't remember. I used to know. Everything about Lost. It's been a long time since I've watched it. But he's the main guy, and he basically has to go home to take care of his mom over the summer because she has a broken leg, and her husband's away. The dad guy, he's away on business, and he ends up sleeping with his mom. And it's a fucking weird movie. It's uncomfortable, and it's great. And I started thinking, like, do people really do that shit? Like, does that really happen somewhere? Like, because that's fucking nasty. Like, I don't even like my mom, like, I don't want my mom, like, popping into my head at all. Like, even remotely when I'm trying to do something with somebody. I don't want her anywhere near anything. Like, I can't imagine, like, what goes through people's heads when that shit happens. But anyway, that's not what I'm trying to make this video about. That's what started this thought process. So I started thinking about that movie, and then I started thinking about, like, guilty pleasure movies, and I'm like, and that's what this video is about. I love chick movies. I'm probably one of the only heterosexual guys that'll ever admit that. Maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's others, but I'm one of the only ones. Most people, like, they pretend they don't like it. You know they do. Well, maybe not. Maybe not everybody, but everybody likes something they don't want to admit that they like. So I thought I would talk about a few of my favorite ones while I'm thinking about it. Maybe some of these aren't really guilty pleasure movies. Some of these are actually really good movies. But I'll add them to the list because they kind of fall under that category, sort of. You'll see. So I guess the first one I want to talk about is, well, we'll get this one out of the way. I love Cool as Ice. If you don't know what that is, it's Vanilla Ice. If you don't know who that is, he was this white rapper guy back in the early 90s, late 80s. Who later released an album, like a metal album. I never heard it. I heard the Ice Ice Baby metal version, but I never heard, like, the rest of whatever was on that album. This is his movie. His movie. He was in other movies. He was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and maybe some other stuff that I don't remember. But this was his movie, Cool as Ice, from 1991. And it was in theaters where I lived at the time in Knoxville. For those of you, you know I'm from Jersey, but I lived in Tennessee for a lot of years. Kind of like split in half. Well, I lived in Jersey more, but I lived in Tennessee a bunch too. Kind of back and forth, really. When I was 11, I moved to Knoxville. And then when I was like 20, I don't know, I moved back to Jersey and kind of went back and forth, and then I was homeless in 2008. I went back and forth, and I don't know. So I've been back and forth a lot. But where I lived in Knoxville, this was in theaters for 2 weeks, and with good reason. I mean, it's a horrible fucking movie, but it's great at the same time. It's Vanilla Ice and his group of friends are riding motorcycles through this town. I don't know what they're doing, where they're going. Um, they don't ever really say what they're doing. They go through this town, and one of the motorcycles breaks down, so they have to stay and get it fixed. And Vanilla Ice meets this girl who's dating some schmuck. I don't know. Some prick guy. And Vanilla Ice is all, yeah, I'm cool, picking up this girl. And he's like, it's basically all it is. And her little brother gets kidnapped by these guys that are after her parents. Because they're in the like witness protection program, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a stupid movie, but it's so great. And, you know, of course, he like saves the day, and you know, but it's great. I love it. I love it. I think I even have the script. I think, yeah, I do. And the rest of these are kind of like romance movies, like chick movies. Some of them are not really chick movies, but they're romance movies, so I kind of added them to this list just for that reason, really. So next on the list, I like Legally Blonde, the first one. Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Coolidge. I don't know, I just... Ditzy Blonde goes to Harvard Law just to show up her boyfriend that dumped her, just to show that she can do it, and she ends up being a lawyer. And I don't know, it's just a good movie. It's fun. It's silly, but it's fun. Really not much to say about it, but I just wanted to add it to the list. That's basically all it is, though. She just becomes a lawyer and shows him up and makes him all like, oh, I wish I didn't break up with you, and then she's like, yeah, fuck you. Step Up. The first one. The first Step Up. I love Step Up. I hate the music and I hate dancing. I don't really give a shit about any of that. But I love Channing Tatum. And I don't know. I like that movie. I don't know why. I don't know. I just like... I don't know. I like the whole... Like, he's like this delinquent that gets into trouble with his friends. They break into the art school, and they kind of like, you know, he takes the blame for it, and he's sentenced to community service, and he you know, he's cleaning the school of the arts, this art school, and meets the girl that actually became his wife in real life. They're divorced now, just recently, but so he's working at this school, doing his hours, and community service sucks. I've had to do... It sucks, man. It's fucking long. It takes forever. But he meets the girl there whose dance partner breaks his leg, and he takes over. He becomes the new partner. And he's like this like hip-hop dancer guy, like, you know... And she's like this ballet dancer. And I don't know, I love Step Up. I've seen all the sequels, and they're like not as good. It's just a bunch of bullshit. But the first one, I don't know, I really love that movie. I think it's just Channing Tatum. I just like Channing Tatum. 21 Jump Street. Fucking hilarious. Maid of Honor. Patrick Dempsey. I like Patrick Dempsey, you know, Can't Buy Me Love, Run. Great movies. And he was in Maid of Honor. And it's basically, it's a movie where his best friend's getting married, and it's a girl. And he kind of like realizes that he's in love with her, and she asks him to be her maid of honor. The guy, maid of honor. And, so they go to Scotland, and it's really nice there. Fucking love it. I love the UK. It's so nice here. If you ever get a chance to live here, do it. It is really nice. It's really nice. I live in northern England. I don't live near London and that whole metropolitan area. I live up in the like middle of nowhere. I live in between Manchester and Liverpool, like halfway, kind of, but a little bit south, just a little bit. And it's really nice. It's really nice here. Anyway, but they go to Scotland. That's where the new fiance guy's from. And he's this like manly man, he's showing the guy Patrick Dempsey up at, and so he basically is trying to tell her that he's in love with her while trying to be her maid of honor and trying to help her with the wedding, and it's just one of those kind of movies. It's just a chick movie, but it's so good. I love it. And I think it's mostly because of Patrick Dempsey, but I don't know. I just like that movie. Nicholas Sparks movies. Now, I've never read any of his books, and I don't really care to. But I love most of the Nicholas Sparks movies. Most of them, not all of them. There's a few I don't really care for. I really love Safe Haven. Safe Haven is kind of a thriller, kind of a romance story. See, the thing about Nicholas Sparks movies that I really like are the twists. There's always like some kind of twist. You don't always get one, or sometimes it's not that big of one. And those are really the movies I don't really care for too much. There's like a rodeo one that I didn't really like very much, mainly because I'm like an animal guy and I like animals. And it just, I don't like, well, I don't know, I just didn't care for it. And there are a couple other ones that aren't very good. The one with Channing Tatum, I don't really like Dear John. Didn't really care for that one too much. But I love Safe Haven. I think that's my favorite one. And I love The Notebook. I fucking love The Notebook. I'm probably the only guy in the world that'll admit that. But I love that movie. I love it. I don't know. Safe Haven, though. Has, what's his fucking name? Josh Duhamel. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's in a bunch of movies from like to the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I don't know the girl's name. She's hot. I don't know who she is, but she's hot. Basically, they try to trick you throughout this movie, and I'm not going to give anything away for those who watch it. If anybody actually is going to watch any of this, but it's kind of a thriller. They kind of make you think one thing, and fuck it, I'm just going to spoil the movie. They kind of make you think she's this murderer on the run. She goes on the run, and they kind of give you flashbacks to this time where she's like stabbed somebody. You don't know what the fuck's happened, and she's on the run. She goes to this small North Carolina town and meets Josh Duhamel or whatever the fuck his name is, and then she just kind of lives there, and they kind of get together, and she becomes friends with this woman who just randomly shows up at certain times, and that's the one aspect of the story I don't like, and I'll explain why in a minute. And but then you get these flashbacks, and then this cop guy is looking for her, so he's like coming after her in the present time, and he's trying to find her. So he ends up finding her, and you realize that it's her husband that she's running from, and he's abusive, and he's a cop, and he just beats her, and I can't remember if she actually does stab him. I think she does, like, do something to him and runs, like freaking out, thinking she's killed him or something. I don't know. I can't remember, but it's like they throw that twist at you at the end. But then there's another twist with the woman, and I think the woman is fuck is her name, man? The Jennifer Connelly lookalike. What the fuck is her name? Fuck, I know I'm gonna like kick myself later when I remember this. The lady who looks like Jennifer Connelly. What the that's gonna piss me off now. So she shows up randomly, and it turns out to be the ex-wife of Josh Duhamel, or whatever the fuck guy's name is, who's died, previously, and she's the ghost, and so she's the only one who can see her. And I didn't really care for that too much. I think they were just like trying to throw shit in there. But I don't know. I really I have a thing for Nicholas Sparks stories. Yeah, I don't know. I like his movies. Okay, so these last ones aren't really guilty pleasure movies. These are just like romance movies that are really good. The first one being Random Hearts, which is Harrison Ford and some other lady. I don't know her name. I probably do, and I just don't realize that's who it is. Um, they're married to other people. They're like two married couples whose Harrison Ford's wife and the other lady's husband are having an affair. So they're on a plane together and they crash and die. And through circumstances, Harrison Ford realizes where his wife was going, whom with whom, and finds out who the guy's wife was. And they kind of end up talking, I guess, and they sort of get together. I guess they do get together. It's kind of like a slow thing, but I mean, they get together, and I don't think they stay together. I don't think they do, but it's a really good movie. Random Hearts, it's really good. And the Before Trilogy, the Richard Linklater Before Trilogy, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. So fucking good. These movies, and now Richard Linklater is the guy who made Boyhood, he's the guy who made Dazed and Confused, all great movies. Well, Boyhood's okay. It's really long, and it was the movie that was like filmed over 12 years. So everybody's like all the same actors over the whole 12-year period just growing up in the movie. But it's really long. It's like 2.5 hours long, unnecessarily. It's good, but it's not great. But Dazed and Confused is fucking great. And the Before Trilogy is so good. And what these movies are. And the first time I watched Before Sunrise, it's like I didn't realize what kind of movie I was going to be watching. I didn't realize what it was. And I'm like waiting for something to happen. I'm waiting for like a plot to kick in. I'm like, what the fuck's gonna happen? What is something gonna, what's gonna happen? I didn't know I knew it was like a romance movie, but I didn't know what the fuck was gonna happen, and nothing happens. These movies, all three of them, strictly the two people in the relationship. Well, okay, the first movie, Ethan Hawke meets Julie Delpy, who's this French woman, on a train in Europe. They meet in Vienna. They're going through Europe. And they stop in Vienna. But Ethan Hawke has to get off the train, and they're just talking on the train. They just meet on the train. And they just talk. That's all they do in these all three movies. They just talk. That's all it is. It's conversation. It's so good. So good, though. So they meet on this train, and he's got to get off in Vienna, Austria, to, to go home, I guess. I think that's what he was doing. I don't know. Can't remember. And he talks her into getting off with him because he likes talking to her, which is probably the same thing I would do. And they get off the train together. She's like, okay, she's kind of like iffy about it, but she's like, okay, whatever. And she gets off, and they just walk around Vienna and talk the whole night. And, they have sex in the park, and they, there's stuff happens during the movie. I mean, they don't just talk, but they talk through the whole fucking, it's just conversation. Walking around Vienna, looking at shit, doing shit, just, that's all it is. There's no plot. So, at the end, I'm going to spoil the shit out of these movies. But they're so good. But, maybe I shouldn't spoil them. They are really good. You should watch these movies. Now, fuck it. So, the end of the first one, he leaves to go home, and they make plans to meet back in a year. Or I think it's just like 6 months or a year, or something like 8 months, I don't know, something. And you're like, oh my god, what's gonna fucking happen? What, are they gonna meet up? You don't know. He just goes. He leaves. So then, 9 years fucking later, Before Sunset comes out. It's the sequel. Same two people, same kind of movie, conversation, walking around, conversation, shit. This time it's in Paris, France, and what it is Ethan Hawke is doing a book tour. He wrote a book about his night with that girl. And so obviously they're not together, and this is 9 years later, real time too, in reality and in the movie. And each one is 9 years later, and they've all been filmed 9 years apart. So I think they're going to do a fourth one, probably. And it's coming soon. So I don't know. I think the last one was 2013, so I don't know. It's probably a few more years. I think. I'm not positive on that, but they're talking about it. So I think the story kind of ended well where it ended, but I could watch more. I could keep going. It would be interesting to see anyway. But so they were in their 20s in the first one, and then they're kind of in their 30s in the second one. He's doing the book tour, talking about his night with the girl. I forget her name in the actual movie. I don't know, it doesn't matter. I don't even remember his name. Jesse and Celeste. Yeah. So he's talking about his night with her in the book. And she shows up at the book tour because she lives in Paris. She lives in France. And she shows up to say hi. She notices that he's going to be there, and she shows up. And they go and have coffee and, talk. And then they walk around Paris and talk. And that's what the whole movie is. And then at the end of the movie, this is the weakest of the three, the second one. Some people disagree, but I think it's the weakest one of the three. The third one's the best. The first one's really good, but the third one's really good. The second one's good, but it's the weakest. The end of the movie, he's got to catch a plane. He's, going to finish his tour. And it turns out that he did show up in Vienna when they were supposed to meet, and she couldn't make it because some grandmother died. Something happened, like she couldn't make it back. And I know I'm spoiling these movies, but they're so fucking good. You should watch them anyway. So they're walking around Paris. He's got to leave, and he ends up going back to her house. He's like, "Oh, I gotta hurry," But she's like, "Come on in," like. And then she sings him a song with her guitar, and he decides to stay. He's like, "Yep, not going home." And he's got a wife and a kid back in the States. So it's tough decision. It's a very tough decision. But he stays. He does stay. And then in the third one, Before Midnight, it's another 9 years later. They're in their 40s now. They're married. The two are married. And the son's there visiting, and they're in Greece this time. And they're on vacation. And the son, he takes the son back to the airport. He's going back to his mother. And, they got divorced, obviously. And the kid's all grown up now. He's like a teenager. And then he goes back to the wife, the French wife now. And they talk. They fucking talk. But this time they're visiting people. They're visiting some family of writers or some, I don't know, some kind of book author guy and his family or something. I don't know. I'm not really sure who they are. Some friends through book writing of author shit. So they go walking around Greece talking. And it's great. And it ends in this humongous argument. And there is a resolution at the end. I mean, they do finally make up. And there's the way it ends. I thought it was a great... It would have been room for a great joke. But they didn't make use of it. And I don't know if they realized it or not. But in the first film, on the train when they meet, he's talking he's like, well, let's pretend there's this time machine, where, you can you're like married in the future, and you think back on that one guy that could have been me, that got you let go, and and he's like, what if you could take that time machine and come back and blah blah blah. I can't remember exactly what he says, but something along those lines, and it would have been great as a reference to that in the end of this third movie. They're talking about something, but it's something they're actually talking about at that time that had happened in the argument. Something that again about a time machine getting brought up, but it's not the same. It's not the same context. And she says, "What about that time machine?" And it was talking about earlier in the film, but it would have been a great throwback to the first film. I just thought it was a funny joke, but it wasn't. I realized that they were actually talking about this earlier in this film. So. Just little things like that would have been great. I don't know, but that's the Before Trilogy, and that's really the end of this, because I wanted to end it with that, since they're so good. They're so good. I think I'm gonna go watch them right now. I think that's how I'm gonna spend the rest of this day. I'll see you guys later.